The Millionaire Booklet by Grant Cardone. Before I start talking about this book, I'm going to tell you a few things that might contradict each other, but they do make sense if you just hear me out. One, if you're looking for a non-biased book reviewer who is not strikingly familiar with at least a small handful of Grant Cardone's books, you're not going to find that here, okay? But two, if you think that that is going to really cloud my judgment, then I guess keep watching, because people have criticized Grant Cardone. They call him dumb, unpractical, arrogant, unreasonable, insane. Some of these things he actually acknowledges and sees as more than healthy. What else? Greedy, selfish, psychopathic. Some people have compared him to the president. And although I don't agree with these things, I can definitely see where they're coming from. Hi, my name is Samuel, and I want to make self-growth normal. If you want to make self-growth normal, because I don't want to do it alone, and who doesn't want to make self-growth normal, then make sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It helps with ranking and SEO and all this other stuff, and I really appreciate it because so much work really goes into making these videos, okay? Grant's work has become much more simplified over the years. Most of his books are 6 to 8 hours long audiobooks. 6 to 8 hours. This, I think, is the second most recent. This one is an eye-watering hour and a half. It's inspired by his experience at this charity event, right? People spent years saving up for this. I think hundreds of people went, and yet a very, very select few were able to actually really contribute to it. And at the end of the night, he looked around and he realized that everyone would have traded places with the one guy who donated a staggering $1 million to the $2 million target. People were crying. They were thrilled. So he went to his wife that night. Honey, I'm gonna write a book about how to become a millionaire. Pretty sure that Grant had way more than $2 million to donate at the time, but I think he really just kind of saw this as an experiment or a learning opportunity. The last year before he did this book, he and his companies had apparently donated over $100 million to charities. But teaching how to become a millionaire, does this book actually do that? I guess time will tell, but it seems a lot more focused and to the point than his others. And when I say that he's changed over the years, here's an example of what I mean. Because he used to leave stuff like this out, and I think that's a big reason it's not that easy for some people to understand where he's coming from. This was written without a ghostwriter, without impressive words, without a bunch of economic facts. In fact, this book was written in 2 hours. Forgive me for simplicity, but I'm trying to make millionaires with it, not award-winning writers or economists. I'm not trying to impress you with how much I've accomplished in my life or how much I know, but the reality is what I've created financially in my life is very simple, and that is why it will work for you. Does that sound like any of those other things I mentioned in the beginning of this? As far as the rest of the review, I'm going to talk about some
early morning scat jam
observations I had about the book throughout the chapters, and also where it kind of stands in his bibliography, in comparison to his other books. The ones I've checked out are 10X Rule, Sell or Be Sold, and If You're Not First, You're Last. But what separates these from others that I've reviewed on this channel, and this is a huge reason I support Grant, is that, simply put, applying the contents to these 3 books, and I guess Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and maybe How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, it has made me more money than any other 5 books I have ever checked out in my, almost 300 book Audible library. 3 of those came from one author. Why are those so special?
Why is this one special?
So I'm going to talk about each chapter. I'm also going to read some standout quotes from the book. I'm going to tell you who I recommend the book to, as well as what books to maybe check out next. In the chapter, Getting Rich is Not a Fantasy, he declares that school teaches math, how to take a test, how to write, read, and they can tell you all about the periodic table.
Schools don't teach you how to be rich. Okay.
It's supposedly a topic reserved for fantasies, movies, and what-if games. Let's be frank. If you know other books about getting rich, there's not really anything new here. But I like all the sources he lists of where most people just get money advice. Our parents will say, get a job,
invest in your 401k.
Okay, little Billy. No offense to anyone named Billy, especially
if you are a small person.
Don't get coffee from Starbucks, but do be grateful for what you have. This isn't bad advice, but
if you think that's how to get rich,
I mean, who did you hear that from? And who did they hear it from? Yeah, the next chapter bounces off of this. You ever buy a book like this or a course and you're so excited, so you tell one of your friends or your coworkers, and they're like, the only person who's gonna get rich from this is the person you bought the book from. Something that surprised me about this book is that it's pretty passionate if you think about it. And the stories he tells from his childhood, I think at some point in this chapter I found myself wondering, rich people are shamed for being rich people, but like, I've never heard anyone shame rich thinking, just rich people. Doesn't one tend to lead to the other? It's also interesting how he looks down on the prospect of saving money. Not the prospect, but just the emphasis people put on the prospect. Let me tell you from experience in the last year. Aside from making music for 3 years instead of reviewing books, has cost me more money than anything else in my entire life. By the way, I love doing both of these things. Whichever one I do, I'll miss the other to some degree every day. From here, there are presented 8 steps to becoming super rich. The first step is to, and I mean, this is also kind of been talked about before, but it gets better. The decision to become rich. This has been talked about by Brian Tracy and Napoleon Hill, both early mentors of Grant's, but this book, you know, it's not a bunch of fluff. There is some interesting material in it. For example, the next chapter, Millionaire Math. And I have heard this, but I haven't really heard it in a book. I've only kind of seen it on Instagram and stuff. Where he stresses the importance of just doing the math to trick yourself. I mean, it's not really a trick, but like into the reality of $1 million. He lays out multiple examples. I mean, it helps to hear this from other people, but you can do it yourself and find out. $100,000 for 10 years is $1 million. $114 every hour of every day for 365 days is $1 million. 2,000 people paying you $500 is $1 million. 5,000 people paying you $17 a month for 12 months is $1 million. 300 people paying $278 a month for 12 months is $1 million. This is like his signature when he puts these things together. He's like,
How can I take like 12 or 13 of these and just make all of them happen so I can make tens of millions of dollars?
like I said, this man is a simplification machine, and this is not something I heard in other books. I love when he explained the concept of surges. You can just hear it in his voice, the confidence in his personal experience with surges too. Income has to be incrementally increased, but like there are points where it just
Spikes.
like when he made $100,000 in a year, his confidence went up a bunch. But then he made $100,000 in a month, and then he made it in a day. After he continued to develop his skills, do the math, and change his mindset,
And then he made it in an hour.
when you hear stuff like this, it's just another reason books are so powerful. Like you hear it and you're like, hey, if he can do it, maybe I can do it. It helps you realize what's possible. Like, you know, whatever the difference is between that guy and me, that he can make $100,000 in an hour, it must be worth exploring, let alone exist, right? Something else I've never ever before. I've been working on my Trump impression. It's really bad. But I'm working on it, okay? Something else I've never heard in any other book is, who's got my money? I love this question so much. Have you ever asked yourself this question, who has my money? In Grant Cardone's experience, most business owners have not. This is a great thing to ask yourself if you're in sales, because it helps you determine who to put your attention toward. Tony Robbins, I think, said that the questions you ask yourself kind of control what you focus on.
Why focus on money, Sam? Life is not all about money.
No. This is not about money. This is about who has your money. It's not about money. It's about sustainability and freedom. In the next chapter, Stay Broke. You know, Grant said stay broke for so long. And until I checked out this chapter, I thought that he meant like as soon as you make money, you just gotta spend it. Isn't that just living paycheck to paycheck? Like, that doesn't make sense, because this guy is obsessed with making and like amassing colossal quantities of wealth. So as it turns out, what he did was, as soon as he made money, he would put as much of it as possible into like these super sacred future investment accounts. He had like 3 of them. He didn't spend all his money, but he did set it aside. And the account or accounts that he had to manage on a daily basis were as dry as he could manage. And this forces you to work out of necessity. When's the last time you had way more money and you work harder than when you're incredibly broke? And listening to these chapters, it's almost like they build on top of each other. I saved up all this money to invest it. Money that I saved up in my accounts, which I fed while I was hungry for years. Me asking myself, who has my money, knocking on doors, dialing phone numbers, doing all this research, building my confidence and knowledge for the moment I know it's the right time to buy this property that's going to create another flow of income that I will use to repeat the process described in this book after smashing that like button, in case you haven't already, for the YouTube algorithm. In the next chapter, Multiple Flows of Income, you really learn a lot of his story in this book that you don't learn in his other books. Not some of his biggest moves, but definitely some of his biggest needle movers. The relationship he left because he wanted to change and the girl didn't. The first few companies he started, the first $100,000 he made, the first million. I mean, I've heard the stories of like so many people getting rich, and it just seems like this flywheel effect where it's incremental. But what he said about symbiotic income flows, that one made so much sense. Income flows that complement each other. I got into sales because for 3 years I was listening to all these audiobooks about business and self-development and technology, and when I started reviewing them, it's always that one comment. This guy, how are you applying all this information? You know what I was doing for 40 hours a week? Renovations, construction. You can only apply so much self-development, business, and technology information into that. So I bounced around a little to find something where I can apply more of this info, and I found a BDC position at a dealership, which I can apply so much of this information from these books in. On top of that, speaking of the symbiotic income flow thing, I'm actually helping them grow their YouTube channel. I started there in February, and I started helping with the channel in maybe June, July-ish, after a lot of Pennsylvania moved into the green phase, but it's been going really well. In fact, we've sold 6 or 7 different cars already from one video that it exploded. I think it has over 17,000 views now, and we would have sold more, but right now it's a very difficult vehicle to get your hands on. Okay? Anyway, overall, if money is not on your mind, this book has the potential to change that in some unexpected ways. Any wealth building books, you could say the same, but like there are some pretty unique aspects of Grant Cardone's philosophy. He hates 401ks and mutual funds. That is not normal. He's not the biggest fan of straightforward frugality because he says that frugal can only help you so much until it traps you. A lot of these books don't talk about increasing your income as much as they probably should. Millionaire Next Door and Unshakable. Great books, and they do talk about it, but not really nearly enough in my opinion. This one fills a unique void in his bibliography, which I'll get to in just a second, but I would love sort of like a sequel that talks about like investing. I know he has one about real estate. I'll review that one as well. Let's go over my favorite quotes in this thing. Let's see how many of them include the word money. Quotes. Spoken by his dad, referring to a quarter he was given but lost the same day at the mall. Never play with money, son. Spoken by his grandpa, referring to the same quarter. The problem isn't that you lost the quarter. The problem is that it was your only quarter. Getting rich shouldn't be your taboo. It should be your battle cry. Anyone who tells you money won't make you happy never had enough money to know whether it would or it wouldn't. Money doesn't sleep, but it does get bored. At 25, I was complaining about how much money I was making. The truth is, I was complaining because I only had one stream of income. Direction 1. You know, in my last review of a Grant Cardone book, I said, okay, the 10x rule is for people in general. Sell or be sold is obviously for salespeople, and if you're not first, you're last is for business owners. But the Millionaire Booklet, I'd say it's probably for people who want to become more money conscious. The book has this cozy fusion of info that's practical and info that's not theoretical but definitely considerable. But if you're a beginner especially, this book is a huge step in the right direction. People can say what they want about Grant Cardone, but it's only like $4. Direction 2. The way Grant talks about money in some points in this book reminded me of Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. That and of course Rich Dad Poor Dad. The thing is, this book was one, far shorter, not that much more concise, but definitely shorter than both, and 2, a little more modern. I can't exactly put my finger on why. I know that some people might say that Rich Dad Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant might be a little
dated per se,
but if you check them out, I think it's pretty obvious why they're so well known despite that. The Millionaire Booklet by Grant Cardone. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books I mentioned in this video. If you guys buy anything through the links in the description, then I get commission, which helps me build this channel and keep making these videos. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I don't get why people watch this far into my reviews and they don't subscribe. But if you have subscribed and you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification whenever I drop new videos, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.